Salam, peace be upon you. My name is Mohammed Layiq Sediqi, the father of Holophase. Part 20, The Mixed Tower, Infinite Spacetime-Nuance. Remember the language we are learning. There is one field, phi, the holophase, the single cyclic movement from which all reality unfolds. When phi differentiates, that one movement generates its first derivatives, and with them, the three dimensions appear at once. Time as omega, space as k, and motion as v. From that first differentiation upward, every higher derivative is an echo of the one below it, an infinite ascent of finer and finer reflections of phi's original movement. And because the dimensions are born from that first echo, time, space, and motion also reverberate into infinity, carrying phi's unfolding into ever deeper rhythms, structures, and flows. Thus, the entire universe, every law, every pattern, every force, every particle, every phenomenon, is nothing but phi, endlessly echoing through its derivatives and their dimensional shadows. All of existence is the infinite echo of one field. Today, we listen to just one of those echoes. In our last two journeys, we performed majestic vertical ascents. We climbed the Temporal Tower, learning the infinite grammar of rhythm and becoming. Then we scaled the Spatial Tower, mastering the infinite grammar of form and arrangement. We now understand the two great pillars of the Holophase language. But a cathedral with only pillars is just a colonnade. Where is the nave? Where is the vaulted space where the pillars meet and intertwine to create a living, unified whole? Today, we step into that sacred space between. We do not climb a new pillar. Instead, we enter the bridge, the crossing, the interweaving. We explore the mixed tower, infinite space-time-nuance. This is where time and space cease to be separate voices and begin their entangled duet, giving birth to the phenomena of travel, interaction, and dynamic reality itself. Let us place this step within our Episode 7 journey. We began by seeing the whole tree. We learned its core alphabet and nuance block. We entered higher-order semantics, understanding complexity and envelope evolution. We then undertook our great vertical integrations. First the Temporal Tower, then the Spatial Tower. Now, we perform the horizontal synthesis. This is a crucial pivot. We are moving from studying the dimensions in isolation to studying their marriage. The mixed tower is not a separate pillar. It is the architectural joint that binds the other two together, creating the stable, dynamic structure of the full language. This brings us dramatically closer to the complete living picture we seek. Imagine then our two infinite towers, standing side by side. The Temporal Tower hums with rhythms. The Spatial Tower gleams with shapes. Between them, a third structure arises. Not another tower, but a latticework of bridges, a web of cross-connections at every level. This is the mixed tower. Its floors are not pure time or pure space derivatives. They are mixed derivatives, the places where time and space talk to each other. A pure time derivative asks, how does phi change as time passes here? A pure space derivative asks, how does phi change as we move now? A mixed derivative asks a richer, woven question. How does the time change of phi vary as we move through space? Or, symmetrically, how does the spatial variation of phi evolve as time passes? It is the mathematical embodiment of space-time crosstalk. It captures the fact that in our universe, what happens in time is deeply connected to where you are in space, and that the shape of space is not frozen, it evolves in time. In linguistic terms, if the temporal tower holds the verbs and the spatial tower holds the nouns, the mixed tower holds the prepositions, the transitive verbs, and the syntactic rules that show how nouns and verbs relate to each other in a sentence. It provides the grammar for phrases like travels toward, spreads from, focuses at, and emerges here now. In the Holophase language, the mixed tower is the syntax of interaction. It is the grammatical framework that allows nouns, spatial structures, and verbs, temporal processes, to combine into meaningful dynamic clauses. Think of the full tree as a language for writing stories. The temporal tower provides the plot, the sequence of events. The spatial tower provides the setting and the characters, the landscapes and the actors. The mixed tower provides the stage directions and the causal links. It tells you how the characters move through the setting as the plot unfolds. A stage direction like exit pursued by a bear is a perfect example of mixed semantics. A spatial action, exiting a location, with a temporal and causal trigger being pursued. The position of the mixed tower in the master tree is architecturally central. It is not a root or a pure branch, but the interstitial network that connects the temporal and spatial towers at every level of derivative order. It is the living proof that the language is not just a list of parts, but an integrated communicative whole. Operationally, mixed derivatives govern how patterns propagate, distort, and interact. The simplest mixed derivative you can imagine is something like the gradient of omega, the change of local frequency in space. This asks, does the local frequency of oscillation change as I move from here to there? If the answer is yes, if omega is different in different places, then a wave crest that tries to travel will find itself in a region with a different natural rhythm. This mismatch causes the wave to bend, speed up, or slow down. This is the essence of refraction: light bending as it enters glass, or sound waves curving in uneven temperature layers of air. Another key mixed derivative is the time derivative of k, the change in local wavelength over time. This asks, is the local wavelength changing as time passes? If it is, the spatial pattern is compressing or stretching over time. You see this when a wave approaches a beach and its wavelength shortens as it feels the bottom. These simple mixed derivatives already give us bending, refraction, and compression. But the real power emerges with higher order mixed derivatives. These govern complex emergent behaviors. Wavefront sharpening and shock formation, for example, occur when the effects of mixed derivatives, such as dependence of wave speed on amplitude, become strong. A smooth wave can steepen until it forms a discontinuous front, a shock wave. The crack of a sonic boom, the breaking of an ocean wave, the front of a detonation. All of these are births of almost infinite spatial derivatives, a sharp edge, mediated by specific mixed derivative relationships. Dispersion and pulse reshaping are another playground of the mixed tower. Here, the way a pulse broadens or compresses as it travels depends on mixed derivatives of the dispersion relation, how omega's dependence on k itself changes with k and possibly with time. Pattern onset and retreat are also governed by mixed derivatives. In systems like chemical reactions or ecological invasions, a stable, uniform state can become unstable. A new pattern, such as spots or waves, emerges from a smooth background. This onset is governed by a critical balance of mixed derivatives crossing a threshold. Similarly, a retreating glacier or a receding hairline is a moving front described by mixed derivative dynamics. If you want to explore the explicit equations that quantify these phenomena, Berger's equation, the Korteweg-de Vries equation, reaction diffusion systems, and more, they are specific sentences written largely in the vocabulary of the mixed tower. By its very nature, the mixed tower expresses the inseparable unity of time, space, and motion. In the time echo, mixed derivatives tell us how spatial patterns carry temporal memory. A weather front's shape today is not arbitrary. It is the result of how wind, a spatial gradient of pressure, evolved over the past days. The front's current form encodes its history through mixed derivative relationships. In the space echo, mixed derivatives show us how temporal processes paint spatial pictures. The rings in a tree trunk are a spatial record of mixed derivatives. Each ring's thickness depends on that year's growth rate, a temporal process, shaped by spatial gradients of nutrients and sunlight. The trunk is a frozen space-time diagram. In the motion echo, mixed derivatives are the most direct. Motion itself is the living embodiment of a mixed derivative. Velocity is change in position per change in time, a fundamental mixed relationship. Acceleration is a higher order mixed derivative of the same type. The trajectory of any object, a thrown ball, a planet, a rumor spreading through a crowd, is a solution to equations built from mixed derivatives of its governing fields. In this sense, the mixed tower does not just have dimensional echoes, it is the mathematical structure that defines how those echoes are linked. It is the grammar of the triple unity itself: time, space, and motion acting together. In our unfolding map of Chapter 4, we have now reached a synthesizing peak. We have the two great pillars, temporal and spatial. The mixed tower is the spanning structure that connects them at every level, forming a rigid triangular truss. This truss now supports the entire canopy of wave semantics: propagation and information, topological semantics, moving defects, and quadratic semantics, balances like energy conservation. This position makes the mixed tower arguably the most important structural component of the language for describing dynamic, observable reality. It is where the abstract capacity for rhythm and form becomes the concrete capacity for story and event. The mixed tower is also the universal translator between branches. With the temporal and spatial towers, its primary role is coupling. Every term in the mixed tower takes one piece from the temporal tower and one piece from the spatial tower and asks how they co-vary. With wave semantics, dispersion and group velocity are direct applications. The dispersion relation, omega as a function of k, is a static link. Its derivatives, such as the derivative of omega with respect to k, which gives group velocity, and the second derivative, which governs dispersion, are quintessential mixed derivatives. They tell you how a temporal property, omega, changes with a spatial property, k, and this directly dictates motion and shape evolution. With topological semantics, the mixed tower governs how defects like vortices move. Their motion is described by mixed derivatives of the phase field around them. The interaction and annihilation of defects are dynamic processes governed by the mixed tower. With envelope evolution, as covered earlier, the evolution of a wave packet's shape is the classic playground of mixed derivative dynamics. And with the principle of least action, we find action integrals that mix temporal and spatial derivatives of fields, such as kinetic and potential energy. Minimizing such an action yields equations of motion, which are, at heart, relationships between mixed derivatives. If a branch of the language involves change or motion, the mixed tower is involved. It is the dynamics department of the Holophase language. The semantic meaning of the mixed tower is profound. It is the dimension of causality and influence. While the temporal tower describes sequence and the spatial tower describes configuration, the mixed tower describes how configuration gives rise to sequence and how sequence reshapes configuration. It encodes causal pathways. This tower allows the universe to express propagation, the spreading of influence, response, how one part reacts to changes in another, flow, the directed transport of quantities, growth and erosion, the changing shape of things over time, and stability and instability, the feedback loops between local changes and global shape. In the full language, the mixed tower is the syntax of narrative. It allows the universe to tell not just what is and what happens, but why it happens there and then, and what happens next as a consequence. It turns a catalog of forms and a timeline of events into a coherent causal story. From the perspective of stability, persistent dynamic phenomena, such as stable planetary orbits, steady convection rolls, or a standing wave, represent fixed points or limit cycles in the space of mixed derivatives. The crosstalk between time and space is perfectly balanced, leading to a repeating, stable pattern. Instability arises when a small fluctuation in a mixed derivative gets amplified by the coupling, leading to runaway change, an explosion, a collapse, or a chaotic transition. The mixed tower also spans a wide spectrum of dynamics. Simple translation, such as a soliton moving unchanged, is a perfect balance of nonlinear and dispersive mixed derivatives. Complex wave breaking, such as a tsunami crest overturning, comes from mixed derivatives leading to a singularity. Oscillatory patterns, like spiral waves in cardiac tissue, are sustained by specific mixed derivative relationships in excitable media. Chaotic advection, the path of a dye droplet in a stirred fluid, arises in a highly complex, unpredictable mixed derivative field. The mixed tower is falsifiable through any experiment that tracks evolving spatial patterns. You might design a system where you can precisely control initial spatial and temporal conditions, such as a shallow water tank, where you can create a specific wave shape and track its evolution with high-speed cameras. First, you measure the initial spatial derivatives, decay and curvature, and the temporal derivatives, omega and alpha, of the wave. Then, using the Holophase framework, you calculate the predicted mixed derivative relationships and thus predict the wave's evolution, whether it will steepen, disperse, or break, and where and when these changes will occur. You then compare this prediction to the observed evolution over time. A clear falsification would be a reproducible, well-controlled physical system where the evolution of a pattern consistently violates the predictions derived from the smooth, differentiable phi field and its mixed derivatives. That would suggest that the underlying dynamics are not captured by this local derivative structure and perhaps require non-local or discontinuous descriptions. The mixed tower is the engine behind every moving, changing thing. In physics and cosmology, shock waves, the bow shock of a planet's magnetosphere, or the front of a supernova blast wave, are spacetime singularities born from mixed derivative terms overwhelming others, creating a discontinuity that propagates. Optical solitons are pulses of light in special fibers that travel without spreading. They exist because the mixed derivative causing dispersion is exactly countered by the mixed derivative arising from nonlinearity, a perfect tension balance in the mixed tower. Black hole accretion disks, the swirling glowing matter around the black hole, exhibit complex dynamics, viscosity, turbulence, and shocks, all described by the mixed derivatives of fluid and magnetic fields in extreme gravity. In chemistry, flame fronts are propagating combustion waves, classic examples of reaction diffusion fronts. The reaction, temporal chemistry, couples with diffusion, spatial mixing, through mixed derivatives to create a self-sustaining, traveling pattern of transformation. Oscillating reactions, like the Belousov-Jabotinsky reaction, show traveling waves of color that are not just temporal oscillations, but spatio-temporal waves. Their speed and shape are governed by mixed derivatives of chemical concentrations. In biology, action potential propagation is a hallmark example. The neural spike is not a static shape. It is a traveling wave of depolarization racing down the axon. The Hodgkin-Huxley equations are a set of coupled differential equations that are essentially a detailed model of the mixed tower's activity in the neural membrane. Animal locomotion is another rich example. The coordinated traveling wave of muscle contractions that allows a snake to slither or a fish to swim is a biological expression of a programmed pattern in the mixed tower, generated by central pattern generators in the nervous system. Epidemic spread is also a spatio-temporal phenomenon. The wave of infection through a population is described by models like the SIR model and its extensions, which are equations describing mixed derivatives, how the rate of change of susceptible people over time depends on their spatial proximity to infected people. In geology, earthquake rupture propagation is a shear shockwave along a fault line. Its speed, direction, and the radiation of seismic waves are determined by the mixed derivatives of the stress and strain fields in the crust. The same logic of spatial-temporal coupling shapes our social and mental worlds. In consciousness and thought, the stream of consciousness is deeply mixed tower. Thoughts do not just sit, they flow. One thought leads to another in a sequence that feels both temporal, one after another, and spatial associative, one connected to another. This associational connection is a kind of cognitive mixed derivative. Learning a skill, like playing a melody on the piano, is not just learning a temporal sequence of notes or a spatial arrangement of keys. It is the precise mixed mapping of which finger moves when to which key. The skill is encoded in the cross-wiring of temporal and spatial motor commands. In history and society, the spread of evolutions is not just a sequence of events in time. It is a wave of social change that propagates geographically. The Spring of Nations in 1848, the revolutions of 1989, the Arab Spring, all were spatio-temporal phenomena. Their speed and contagion depended on mixed derivatives. The rate of ideological adoption over time as a function of communication networks and social proximity in space. Urban growth and traffic provide another example. A city expands in a pattern over time, and traffic jams become moving density waves on a road network. These are direct manifestations of mixed derivative dynamics in social systems. In economics and markets, flash crashes and contagion events reveal mixed tower behavior. The 2010 flash crash, for instance, was a spatio-temporal shockwave in the financial network. Localized selling pressure, a spatial gradient in order types and positions, triggered a rapid automated chain reaction in prices, a large temporal derivative that propagated through linked assets. Technology adoption, like the spread of smartphones, often follows an S-curve over time. But this temporal curve is the aggregate result of a spatial diffusion process, adoption spreading from innovators to early adopters to the majority. The best diffusion model is a mixed derivative equation, linking time evolution to network structure. Even communication and language themselves are mixed phenomena. A conversation is a real-time spatio-temporal dance. Your response in time is shaped by my words, which arrive as an auditory pattern, and by my nonverbal cues, which are spatial arrangements of facial expression and posture. Effective communication requires continuously solving a fast, implicit, mixed derivative problem to maintain alignment and understanding. The spread of a meme or idea is similar to an epidemic. Its virality depends on the mixed derivative, how quickly it replicates over time across the network landscape of minds and platforms. In every case, we see that dynamic, lived reality happens in the mixed domain. We do not experience time and space separately. We experience processes unfolding in places, and places changing over time. The mixed tower provides the language for this unified experience. Now you can begin to perceive this unifying bridge everywhere. When you watch any wave, a water wave, a stadium wave, a sound wave moving through air, do not just see the shape or hear the pitch. See it as a spatio-temporal unity. Notice how the shape moves. The very fact that you can track a crest with your eyes is proof of the mixed derivative relationship between the wave's spatial form and its temporal evolution. When you observe traffic flow on a highway, try to see the traffic not as individual cars, but as a density wave. A slowdown, a change in speed over time, creates a compression wave, a change in density over space that travels backward along the road. You are watching a shock wave in the mixed tower of traffic dynamics. When you feel the wind on your face, remember that the wind is air in motion, the pure expression of a mixed derivative of the pressure field. The pressure gradients in space drive flows in time, and the changing gusts are higher order mixed derivatives at play. You can also track a rumor or a trend through your social world. Notice how a piece of news or a fashion idea moves through your circle. It has a front, a speed, and a tendency to strengthen or fade. You're observing mixed derivative social dynamics. A simple practice is to watch cream swirling into coffee. Do not just steer absent-mindedly. Really watch how the swirls form, stretch, fold, and mix. You are witnessing a beautiful, turbulent ballet directed entirely by the mixed tower. The coupling between the fluid's velocity, which is motion, and the concentration of cream, which is a spatial pattern, as both evolve in time. You are learning that the most fascinating things in life, change, travel, interaction, growth, are not properties of time or space alone, but of their marriage. And you now have the language to describe that marriage. And so we return with a fuller understanding to phi. The mixed tower, with its infinite web of cross connections, is still just an echo of phi. It emerges automatically from the simple, profound fact that phi is a single field that exists across spacetime. When you differentiate this field once with respect to time and once with respect to space, you are not adding new magic, you are asking a more detailed question about the same underlying movement. With the understanding of this tower, our episode 7 goal comes sharply into focus. We now have the root, phi, the core alphabet, omega, k, dphi, v, the nuance block, including alpha, curvature, and so on, and the three great structures, the temporal tower, the spatial tower, and the mixed tower that binds them. We are no longer looking at a tree with many branches. We are seeing a coherent, load-bearing architecture. The mixed tower is the keystone that locks the other two in place, creating a stable vault from which the rest of the language, topology, waves, balances, identities can safely hang. This is the living picture. This is the complete language beginning to breathe as one entity. As we conclude our exploration of the mixed tower, let us stand in this central space and feel its significance. We have discovered that between the pillars of time and space lies not emptiness, but the crucible of all happening. This is where rhythms become journeys, where shapes become stories, where nouns meet verbs to create destiny. This tower is the forge of reality. In its lower levels, we find simple travel and flow. In its middle levels, we find the complex dances of stable patterns and emergent structures. In its highest, most complex webs, we find chaos, creativity, and the unique, unpredictable events that give the universe its flavor of surprise and novelty. All of it, from the orbit of the moon to the flow of your thoughts, is space-time crosstalk. And all of that crosstalk is described by the Holophase language's mixed tower. Our journey through the foundational towers is now complete. In our next part, we will step into a different, fascinating layer of the language. We will enter Chapter 5, Topological Semantics, where we explore the discrete digital core that lives within this analog continuum, the world of winding, knots, and the digital core. We will see how the smooth fabric of phi can give rise to stable, countable things, the particles and defects of reality. But for now, stand in this bridge. Feel the rhythms from the left tower and the shapes from the right tower meeting within you. With every breath, with every beat of your heart, with every glance around the room, you are not just a passive observer. You are an active participant in the mixed tower, a node where time and space conspire to create the momentary, miraculous phenomenon of your alive and aware presence. Salam, and peace be upon you until part 21.